Hi, and thanks for watching NovAsnom, Macedonian NovAsnom channel. Today we have a special guest. We are coming right from Serbia, Belgrade, where we welcome Mr. Џон Bosnić, who is a Canadian from Serbian descent, who has been living in Serbia for the last
13 years this year.
Years.
Lucky 13.
Absolutely. And prior to that, is an enormous experience living in and working in Japan, and having a very good work background in journalism, political analysis, business, and else. Џон, thanks very much for being our guest.
Pleasure.
Yes, I greatly appreciate. Today in Belgrade is a great day and great to have you here. Recently there was an election in the States. Can you tell us a little bit about whether there would be any impact towards the American foreign policy?
Oh, I would say absolutely. This is going to make a major difference because whenever the American government is divided internally, it means we on the outside are going to suffer less. Instead of fighting us and bombing us, they're going to fight each other. So we've got the Republican Party, which itself is divided between the rhinos, Republicans in name only, and the pro-Trump Republicans, who are much more like the original Republicans, who were non-interventionist, non-imperialist. They did not want a worldwide empire controlled by America. So we say in English, we say the purse strings, that means the control of the money, is now in the hands of the Republican Party, because the Congress has to approve the budget. And if the Republicans don't approve the budget, doesn't matter what Biden decides to do, he can't pay for it. He can't deliver his HIMARS long-distance artillery to Ukrainian Nazis anymore. He can't start any new wars outside of Ukraine. And basically, for the next 2 years, Joseph Biden is a lame duck president. This is very important, because a lame duck president does not have the power to unilaterally start new wars. He can't finance them.
Yes, so he needs Republican approval,
right,
in order to conduct its policies.
That's right. And if he gets approval of part of the Republican Party, then Trump will conduct a purge of the Republican Party internally to eliminate those who, like John McCain, the late John McCain, who are actually not Republicans at all. They are members of the Democratic Party, which is the war party of America.
How would that, what do you see in the next couple of years then?
Well, I would say it's going to be even faster than that. I'm thinking in the next 6 to 8 months, we're going to see a foreign policy conversion in the United States to a more defensive stance and a less aggressive policy, unless Biden goes crazy, which is possible. He's already senile. And initiates wars by provocation. I think that we're going to see now that Nancy Pelosi is out, we're going to see a softening down of the pressure on China over Taiwan. We're going to see a pullback of America as they continue to lose the war in Ukraine. Now, I know that sounds strange to those of you who watch the lying mainstream media, the CNN, MSNBC, ABC, and whatever other lies you might want to listen to, like the BBC, lie headquarters of the world. If you watch them, you'd think that the Ukrainians are running a blitzkrieg through Russians. No, sorry guys, it's not going that way. The Ukrainian armed forces are, first of all, they're not led by Ukrainians. They're led by American special forces, some of whom have ethnic Ukrainian roots, others of whom don't even know a single word of the Ukrainian language. Nothing. These people work for a puppet, a marionette, named Zelensky, who was put in power by the United States, which scripted a TV show The TV show itself was scripted by the CIA. Created to create Zelensky, to then sell Zelensky as a man who's been in your living room, you've been watching him on like All in the Family, Archie Bunker or whatever.
Yeah.
You've watched him for the past couple of years on TV. He's a great guy, he's a man of the people, and he's fighting for democracy. Well, since all of the previous leaders of Ukraine were fake leaders anyway, Yulia Tymoshenko, the not blonde Ukrainian, not long-haired, braided, she's brunette. That's a wig.
Yes.
Okay? So the whole thing's fake. She's succeeded by a guy named Yatsenyuk. Yatsenyuk was just directly run by the United States Embassy in Kiev. Then Yatsenyuk is replaced. We've got Poroshenko. Poroshenko is just an oligarch, a multi-millionaire, billionaire in fact, who just does what the CIA tells him. Then we've got a bunch of oligarchs around the area. Kolomoisky is the owner of the television station that created the CIA scripted television show to create Zelensky. As I've mentioned before, you've got a strange situation in Ukraine where you've got a civil war between the Ukrainians who know that they're Russians and the Ukrainians who don't know that they're Russians. Right?
That's interesting.
And they are being script managed by a man who is neither Russian nor Ukrainian. Zelensky is Jewish. He belongs to a different ethnic tradition. And he's been put in power by an oligarch who is also Jewish, Kolomoisky, who is a dual citizen of Ukraine and Israel. And the minute that he was sought under warrants in Ukraine, in the United States, and in Russia, he flew to Israel. And as you know, the Israeli law is that no Israeli can be extradited to another country. So we've got the owner of Zelensky sits in Israel. He owns Zelensky, but he farmed out the local management of Zelensky to the CIA, which recruited ethnic Ukrainians in America to pretend to be Ukrainians. They aren't, they're Americans. And those Ukrainians control an army which is officered by neo-Nazis who are just continuing the Ukrainian, Western Ukrainian tradition that comes from Galicia, the former Austro-Hungarian province, which is Western Ukraine, centered on the town of, they call it Lviv, but it used to be called Lvov in Poland, which was the center of the neo-Nazis in Ukraine. So that's the scenario. If you watch CNN or MSNBC, which means NBC bought by the Silicon Valley oligarchs, Microsoft and NBC, or ABC, or any other American lying mainstream media, you would not know. Yeah, you would not know it. You would not know this.
So basically,
we don't even have the level of transparency today in Ukraine that we had in the 1960s or early 1970s when Walter Cronkite had enough respect in America that he could go live on CBS television and say, sorry, this war in Vietnam is not an American war. We've got to leave. That's Walter Cronkite had to say the truth about Vietnam. There's nobody in the lying mainstream media of America today who has that ability, that respect to do that. And in fact, the people who created this war, Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was what? My father's roommate in university, at McGill University in Montreal.
Nice.
Okay. Zbigniew Brzezinski's daughter is the anchor of ABC's Morning Joe program.
Oh.
So you've got the man who created the war in Ukraine, who created the fake workers' union called Solidarność, or Solidarity, who created Lech Walesa, who created the Polish Pope. It's not the bishops in Rome who picked the Polish Pope. It was Zbigniew Brzezinski saying, look, We can crush the Soviet Eastern Bloc if we take a pope from Poland and they're 96% Catholic. They're going to be so excited that it's a Pole who's been selected by God to lead them. Mm-hmm. We can crush the whole Soviet bloc. And he did it. He created John Paul II, who himself worked in a Nazi capacity, World War II. He created a system whereby the CIA farmed out their business collecting Jewish assets to a guy named George Soros, who was a collaborator with Nazis in Hungary. And they created what I call a theater of the absurd. Today's reality. We live in a theater of the absurd, and guess what? We've got free tickets. We don't have to pay anything. Because they're taking the money out of our pockets every minute.
Oh, yeah.
The weapons, billions of dollars of weapons going to support an army which is being slaughtered in the field by Russians who are trying not to kill them because they consider them to be brothers, but who are being forced to fight each other by a policy of divide and conquer, which is coming from London. Why London? How is London involved here? Because in America, if you're a smart young man, the pinnacle of your academic achievement is to be nominated for a Rhodes Scholarship and to go to London to be turned into an Englishman. Who got the Rhodes Scholarship? Bill Clinton. And hundreds of other American politicians. They're taken like the unwashed natives of North America, taken to England, turned into civilized agents of the empire. My professors in Eastern Canada wanted to nominate me for a Rhodes Scholarship. I had no idea what this was, except that this is the most valued scholarship in the Western world. Mm-hmm. I went home and I told my father, who was a professor of political science, I said, "Dad, my professors want to nominate me for a Rhodes Scholarship." He goes, "Well, congratulations, son, if that's the road you've taken. Please never contact me again." I said, "What?" He said, "Well, do you know what a Rhodes Scholarship is?" I said, "Not really." He goes, "Well, it's created by Cecil B. Rhodes, the man who created the country of Rhodesia, today's Zimbabwe, by enslaving all of the blacks, trading slaves, and making those blacks dig up diamonds and gold for him, by which he created a fund to finance the Rhodes Scholarship. And the reason he created the fund to create the Rhodes Scholarship was because he realized that there are far more colored and black people in the English Empire than there are white people. Mm. And because the victims of the English Empire were not colorblind, he realized that eventually they're going to say, how come we hundreds of millions of black guys are controlled by this one guy, this white guy, who's not even from here? Better let's make a scholarship system so we pick the best, smartest black guys and Indian guys and Caribbean guys, bring them to England, turn them into white men in their minds, but let them be our marionette leaders in their home countries. And so they corrupted all of Southeast Asia, they corrupted Africa, they corrupted South America, and they put black guys who were really white guys in power. And the one who crushed the system was Gandhi, who was invited to study in England, went to England, learned their tricks, and used their tricks against them to liberate India.
That's nice.
This is the way the freedom came. A marionette cut his own strings. We're not going to see that from Zelensky, because he's already parked a couple of $100 million offshore in secret bank accounts, so-called secret bank accounts, which were all revealed in the Pandora Papers, which was the big leak of secret bank accounts in Zelensky's name.
Yes. It seemed that the Western population lives in a certain media environment where the truth is not told.
A truth exclusion zone.
Yes, absolutely.
I like to compare it to a fishbowl in which you are a goldfish.
Yeah.
You're a millionaire in America. You made it. I made my first million. Selling trucks to these guys. They sell the parts to those guys. And now I've got $1 million.
Okay. That sounds good.
You look gold, but of course you're not gold. You're just another fish in the fishbowl. But because you're a goldfish, you think you're the rich one and you're in charge. When you jump out of the fishbowl, which takes a real focused decision, you have to say, I'd rather not live my life in the fishbowl as a servant of the guy who's feeding me some fish food. I'd rather get out and swim in the ocean free. When you do that, and you look back in at the fishbowl, you realize that the paradise that they sell to us in the West is actually a prison. That's why they named one of those programs at InfoWars, they called it Prison Planet. Because most of the people in this world live in a prison. And they live in a prison that they built for themselves. A psychological prison. You're not locked up behind the bars anywhere. You have created a cage in which you live, in which you bring a wife, or you bring a husband if you're a woman, and you raise children inside the cage, and you tell them that this is freedom. And you're actually inside the cage. And that's why we need to study the classics and Plato's allegory of the cave, where everybody lived in darkness, lit up by little candles that they thought was the sunlight. And hands were used to create shadows on the wall, and that shadow, or that cinema, like today's Hollywood, was the lie of what life is. A philosopher, which is just a free-thinking person, has to get out of that cave and find the real sunlight outdoors. He has to climb up, get outdoors, find the real sunlight, and then if he's an honest man, he has to dig back down into the cave and bring everybody else out.
What would you suggest to the people up to the West that are on the other side?
Start watching the enemy media. Start going on YouTube and watching programs like Redacted. Go in there and look at all of the linked programs. Go to, there's a website called antiwar.com. So antiwar.com is officially a libertarian website.
Okay.
But all articles revealing how the war empire...
Excuse me.
No problem. All the articles that reveal how the war empire works are there. You can read those. And then you're going to start getting to things like the Mint Press, Redacted, a long series of websites. Those websites, you need to watch that news. And then you compare that to the lying mainstream media that feeds you what the army and what the White House and what the State Department dictate to them to print. And the reason why more and more people are being enlightened about this is because some of the biggest players in the world have decided enough is enough. We're going to stop putting our boys into the meat grinder and killing them like in Vietnam. We're going to stop sending billions of dollars of taxpayers' money to a faraway country to massacre ethnic Russians because England hates Russia, because Russia controls the land and they control the sea. We're not going to do that anymore. We've had enough. How did it happen to me? I became a student leader in university by chance. I was studying geodetic engineering. I won the world prize in my field. I was a very good engineer. And one day my computer science professor said, look, I know you engineers couldn't care less about ballet or music or painting, but both of my children are artists. And the university is going to close the art center to save money for the budget. And then it won't be a university, it'll just be a technical school. Because the universe of knowledge will no longer be taught here. Just how to make money will be taught here. So is there any one of you who would be ready to write a letter to the editor of the student paper to complain about this? I said, sure, I will. My parents raised me going to the ballet, the symphony, and arts. I like art. I'm an engineer, but I like art too. So I'll write it. So I wrote a letter suggesting to the university president that instead of destroying the arts center, he should just demolish the building and build a work boot factory with steel-toed work boots so we can all work at factories for the rest of our lives instead of going to university. 2 days later, campus security police came to my classroom and said, "The president of the university wants to see you." What? Come now. I get in the police car, the campus police car, go to the president's office, and the president's sitting at a big table, big desk and chair high up, and there's this couch for students who are called in. The couch is literally on the floor. So I'm lying on the floor like this, looking up at God, the university president. He goes, "You know I could expel you for this?" I said, "I don't think so, sir. I haven't violated any of the rules of the university that would require you to expel me or enable you to expel me. My father fought in World War II against fascism and against totalitarianism and against communism." And just to let you know, the anti-totalitarianist side won the war. The Nazis were destroyed. So if you want to expel me, try it. And now that you've come here to tell me I can't write a letter in Canada where we believe in free speech, I'm going to run for the student union. And I did. And I was elected. I served 4 years in student government at the position of leader of the student government. I was expelled from university. I fought to the Supreme Court to get my diploma. I got my diploma. I went to Montreal to do my graduate studies. And just by fate, we Serbs believe in sudbina, which means fate. Just by stroke of fate, I get to Montreal. I'm starting my master's degree in political science. I've left engineering because I realized there's no use being an engineer if you're working for criminals. If all the politicians are criminals, why would you want to build bridges and roads for them? Because they're going to move the roads through their property so they get more money. They're going to build the bridges in the wrong location because they get profit for their friend who owns that land. They're going to farm out all the contracts to construction companies that they get a percentage kickback from. It's a criminal world. The fishbowl is criminal. Now that we're out of the fishbowl, we have to make a better system. So I went to Montreal to do political science master's degree. And by chance, one day, I'm going to a nightclub to meet 2 girls with whom I was living, and I watched the police beat a man for no reason other than the fact he couldn't understand their orders in French.
Speaking of fascism,
yeah,
by looking parts of the Ukrainian army, insignia, Azov battalion.
It's a direct copy from the Nazi symbolism. Direct copy. Nazi symbols, and in fact, many of the captured neo-Nazi Azov battalion members who came out of the steelworks at Mariupol are fully adorned with Adolf Hitler's face, SS logos, swastikas. They were all photographed and videoed on television as they came out. No videos made it to the lying mainstream media in the West. None. The people in the West do not know that Canadian military trainers and Canadian federal police trainers were training swastika-wearing, tattooed Nazis in Ukraine. And how did this happen? How did that take place? Well, when an economy starts to fail, when you can't suck water out enough to sell it to the Americans, and you can't run your steel mills 24/7 because the workers are unionized, people start to think, well, we don't have good political leaders. Let's go back to somebody who we know from the past. So they go to Pierre Elliott Trudeau, who was an anti-globalist, independent, anti-American prime minister, and they look for his son. Well, Ĝastin Trudо, the current Prime Minister of Canada, his mother is manic depressive. So she couldn't raise her children by herself. So big industry and banks came and gave her support and money. And they kidnapped her children, effectively, and trained them to be globalist banksters. Trudeau comes up and he's suddenly from nowhere. He's an acting school teacher. He suddenly parachuted into the prime ministership by becoming the leader of the Liberal Party. Mm-hmm. And the naive Canadians, like myself, vote for Trudeau because it's going to be a continuation of the independent-minded, honest prime minister. And they get a fascist-trained puppet. Why do I say puppet? Because he's a hand puppet run by the deputy prime minister, Chrystia Freeland. Who's that? Chrystia Freeland is the granddaughter of not a neo-Nazi, but a Nazi publisher in Ukraine, who published propaganda for Adolf Hitler, who published propaganda for the Nazi SS division Galicia. That's what her granddad did. And she penetrated the Canadian government after being a hard right-wing extremist and working with American hard right-wing extremists who saved Nazis after World War II and brought them to America to make the space program.
What needs to be done in order to turn the situation?
This needs to be done, what we're doing right now. Mm-hmm. Free, open discussion of how we got to where we are now. Once the public knows how this happened, they can undo it. That's why the kind of things that you and I are discussing here are banned from the lying mainstream media. And I'm so happy that Donald Trump, who himself is certainly far from perfect, coined that term, lying mainstream media, because now I can use it. If I had called him the lying mainstream media, they'd, oh no, he's paranoid. The President of the United States of America called the American media the lying mainstream media.
Fake news too.
Yeah, if he said that, then I'd say he's got a pretty good perspective on what's going on, sitting in the White House looking down on all of it.
Speaking of which, do you think that he will win?
If Trump manages to get the Republican nomination, in other words, if he manages to control the traitors in the Republican Party who work for the military-industrial complex, the rhinos, Republicans in name only, if he defeats them, he'll be the Republican candidate if he's in good health. Even though he's old now, I mean, he's getting towards 80. Like Biden. Biden's already senile. But what is an aging society anyway? An aging society is a selfish society. An aging society is a society in which women say, I don't want to have more than one child. It's too hard for me. I got to juggle my job and this child. So children are raised with no brother or sister, so they don't learn what sharing is, because there's nobody to share with. There's just mom and dad who give you everything, and you're the most spoiled child that ever lived. If you're spoiled, you want more. As you get older, you want more. So everything becomes about materialism. Nobody goes to church. The churches are turned into discotheques. The best discotheque in downtown New York was a church. Limelight.
That's interesting.
I mean, you turn the churches into discotheques full of prostitutes. You aim for money because you want to get more money than the other guy because the girls will like you more. I mean, naive men say, when a guy says, I've got a new girlfriend or I'm going to get married, you go, what does she look like?
Yeah.
Not naive women say, when their girlfriend says, I'm getting married, they say, what does he do? Because what does he do means how much money you're going to have and whether you're going to have material stability to have children. But you're only going to have one anyway because you don't have time for children because you've got a job. So population starts to go down, and the proportion of the population which is older becomes bigger. And so since they're the bigger part of the population, the political leaders have to be drawn from that group. So you've got 80-year-old president and 79-year-old candidate. And if Trump were to get elected, he's allowed to actually have 2 more terms. So he could be 90 maybe.
That's interesting.
So the 19 non-octarian, I don't know, I can't even remember the word in English. A 90-year-old president running the future of America. Interesting.
Yes.
But I mean, this is a corruption of the concept of familyhood. That children are a burden. We got married because together we got more money and we could have a bigger house together, and we'll have 4 bedrooms with nobody in them. That's what you see in America. You see what they call McMansions, like McDonald's, McShake, McMansions. It's a big wooden house that's made out of gyprock and tar paper. Looks like the White House. Most of them look like the White House. Columns, big white. And in there's nobody there because there is no family. And it only lasts one generation because it starts to rot because it's made out of wood, not out of stone like our houses here in the Balkans. Mm-hmm. You just demolish it and build a new one. And so the kids move away because their job is, say you're born in Boston, but you get a job in San Francisco. Well, it's far, so you don't see your mother or father anyway, and you have no interest in moving back to Boston, living in the family home, because it's rotten anyway. You're going to just tear that tar paper shack down, build another tar paper shack over there. Yeah. And you all live like tenement housing in the 1920s when there was the Depression. That's where America has gotten now. And that's why so many Americans become security contractors in Iraq for $35,000 a month so that they could go back and show that money and say that they were a success. But the money that they're showing to show that they're a success is just paper toilet paper anyway, because it's not backed by silver nor gold. Who is backed by gold now? The Russian ruble. So, what we've seen since my childhood, when there was the evil Soviets, going to try and take over the world, which they never wanted to do. But the evil Soviets are going to take our way of living away from us and bring their fake society to us. And now what we've got is we've got the evil Americans who are coming. There are no Soviets anymore. The evil Americans are coming to steal our countries from us, like they stole your country, and like they've stolen Serbia, and like they crushed Yugoslavia, and like they're doing in Ukraine, and like they did in Syria, and like they did in Libya, because they can't make enough money to keep printing toilet paper dollars that look like you're rich. So they have to steal the gold from Libya. They have to steal the natural resources from Serbia and Macedonia. They need to occupy places like Ukraine and steal the trillions of liters of gas and pretend that they're still rich. They're not still rich. They're just bigger crooks than they ever were. That's the world we live in.
Jon, thank you very much.
Pleasure.
For being our guest. I wish you all the best. We'll keep in touch.
Great.
And thanks for watching Macedonian NovAsnom. Wish you guys all the best.